Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Waking Up Cerberus. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and Jeff Johnson is joining me in the studio. We're waiting for Greg Junkbon Carpenter, but until then, I will be sitting in the master host seat for now. Welcome, everybody. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Today is May 23rd, year of our Lord 2019. We've got some great stuff lined up to talk to you about today. Want to remind you, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network, our fan page, CRN, my news page, Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report. Thank you, Jeff Johnson, for administering my page for me during my hard sentence in the Facebook Correctional Facility. I think I've got, less than 3 weeks remaining. Again, I'm seeing people that are posting on Facebook that they're getting Facebook jail for posts that are 7, 8 years old. So it's not just me. They are trying to silence voices with whom they disagree. But we all know that. Junkbon has just joined us. I'll be bringing him in momentarily. Let's see. We have a SoundCloud page. If you're not able to listen live, download all of our episodes at your leisure. The Spy Who Loves Liberty, Liberty Minutes, The Wasatch Report, Case in Point, Fundamentals of Federalism. We've got a lot of fun stuff for you to listen to. We have a YouTube channel as well. Please subscribe, follow on both. If you can listen live via YouTube, join us in our live chat. Jeff is monitoring that, and he will submit your comments. Jeff, I think we'll answer one in a little bit that came in the other day about my disdain for all politicians. Is there anybody I like? We'll address that in a little bit. But first, I want to remind you also, you can find all of our social media links on my website, SuzanneCSherman.com. That will take you to my Facebook page, my Facebook news page. And then we have a SoundCloud and YouTube button on the social media bar. My articles, I have one that just came out this week from the 10th Amendment Center. We'll be talking about that today. Mike Lee's support for the Cradle Act. And let's see, my blogs are also there. I just had another one out this week. If we might have time to address it today, it's called The Recalcitrant Prepper. What do you do if you have the preparedness mindset, but friends or close family members are absolutely not on board? What to do? If we don't get to that today, go to my website and check it out. That being said, let's bring Greg Junkbon on the air. How are you today, my friend?
Much better, much better, much better.
You had a
nasty sound. Does it sound?
Yeah, you sound way better. Hey, since you are on today, I want to talk about something really quick that has a Utah flair and take advantage of your knowledge and expertise in this area.
Ooh, I like this flair. I'm wearing 15 pieces right now.
My goodness. KSL is talking about interesting bit of information I came across the other day. Utah Attorney General signs on to a beta test new AI tech that detects concealed weapons. I've heard about stuff like this going on in New York, where they could see, I guess, through clothing to determine whether or not they're weapons on an individual's person. I also remember when I lived in California, there was a very, very bad neighborhood not far from where we lived. It was East Palo Alto. That area has since been developed and it's changed quite a bit. But I remember them talking about special I don't know what it was, a program or some sort of a listening technology where they could pinpoint the exact location of gunfire, even what type of caliber the round was. So this takes this stuff to a whole new level, though. And the story starts as follows. Again, this is out of KSL. We'll put it on our web pages and we'll put it on our Facebook pages. Utah AG has signed up his office to beta test a new technology that uses AI to detect concealed weapons. It's called HexWave. It can identify both metal and non-metal concealed objects using 3D imaging and deep learning algorithms. According to a Wednesday news release from Liberty Defense, an Atlanta-based company, acquired the tech. Said the company acquired the tech from a Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We'll just say MIT. That's a lot easier. So someone
just say Lincoln Labs, because that's the U.S. government labs up there that created that with the help of students from MIT, part of the scientific outreach program.
Thank you.
Keep going.
if someone enters a school with a concealed gun or other weapon, HexWave could potentially detect the danger, then alert school security to the threat. Interestingly enough, what if this is somebody that has a valid permit and this is a school property that does allow them? We're seeing this come about now. So is that really a threat? It seems like the default is people that are carrying concealed are always a threat. It always seems to work that way. So Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes says, we are pleased to be a part of this phase of testing this new product. Of course he is. Innovation in this space is essential as the type and frequency of threats also evolve. We look forward to evaluating the capabilities of the HexWave product. The technology, end of quotation, could be installed at the perimeter of a building to expose potential threats before they enter, or inside a building to spot danger, even amid a large crowd. The system could be integrated to fit into walls or behind signs and screens. This could be especially useful not just in schools, but sporting and concert arenas, stadiums, Olympic venues. We have the Olympics coming our way, we think. Places of worship, government offices, amusement parks, and festivals, the company claims. In a world often rocked by the tragedy of mass shootings and terrorism, Liberty promises that HexWave is the future of reducing violence, loss of life, and damage to property, and can provide early warning threats to security staff before the threat is carried out. Let me digress for a moment here. Utah is a shall issue state. We have so many people with concealed carry permits here. Open carry is also legal here. What are they going to do when this software, its radar detector is just going off the hook because so many people are going to these events? Are they just now going to say, we now decree all these events are gun-free zones? So what they're not going
you're going to end up with some type of a chip or something that identifies that you have been selected to not be a threat. And then that way it'll not set off the alarm. It'll let them know that you're carrying, but it'll let them know that you're not a threat. You're going to go back to your social credits.
Yeah, well, then with our social credits, what if they decide that you in fact are a threat, even though you've done nothing technically, legally wrong, but you might be a threat because of, I don't know, say your political views? I'll just wrap up.
They're going to take you down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the few technologies of its kind that does not use facial recognition, and that's a feature that has recently come under scrutiny for invasion of privacy. We're seeing that at the airports. I was recently, or I guess last September, at the San Jose International Airport, and I looked at one of the entryways to the parking garage, and it looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. There were cameras just at every single angle, getting into your passenger side, in the rear of the car, the front of the car as you get your ticket, license plate. I mean, this was just insane. There were probably 10 cameras aimed at that one area of entry there. So Liberty Technology, the CEO, Bill Riker, says that we're excited that the Attorney General of Utah recognizes the potential value of this technology and the opportunity to provide for enhanced security in the state. I, for one, am not excited. I'm severely disappointed. The partnership with Liberty Defense will require Reyes to facilitate introductions and advice and advise interested parties and venues on the potential for the technology. We're pleased to be a part of the phase of testing this new product innovation in the space. See, this is the thing. There are a lot of people that are convinced that any gun carrier is evil, is bad. So if let's say a private venue decides they want to incorporate this, they can circumvent our right to carry and just have us signaled, we're highlighted before we even walk in the door of these places. Look at what happened to me recently. I was singled out.
Sorry, I hate these. Okay, I had to close this. Sorry. Trying to have that article up, but I can't do it. Sorry.
What do you want me to do?
No, nothing. It was my fault. I was trying to bring that article up about China.
Oh.
And it's playing stupid ads.
Oh,
You're
well,
not using the Brave browser like I told you.
No, I am not, because actually, when I try to run Hangouts and everything, it screws the frick out of it, and I don't. We can't work, so I have to use Google.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
so are you producing?
right now I am, but
Okay, so you're doing your job. You're doing fine. Don't worry about it.
we'll figure it out later. But
Yeah, no.
so since I've interrupted everything, Greg, I shared an article earlier about China and travel and their social credits. So I'm going to tie this all. This is going off a little bit on a tangent, but I'm tying it all together here. Just stand by.
when we're done with that, I'd like to go back and analyze how they use the information with AI to make this product work. So, Jungkwon, keep that in mind. We want to go back to that.
Okay.
So here we have China with their social credits. They denied millions of people to the ability to fly, hundreds of thousands to even get on a train, and denied hundreds and maybe thousands of people jobs with social credits, which is coming here. We already have them, Greg. I know. Okay, so I argued with a so-called conservative on Sirius Satellite, and I'll give his name because he's a fake and a phony and a fraud. It was David Webb. He's one of Levin's cronies, another fake, phony, and a fraud, and a plagiarist. So he would not let me argue about this real ID. And here we are. We have real ID coming, which will not allow you to travel if you don't have the government's approved ID. Right. And so social credits, real ID, it's all starting to come together. And now with this AI, they can, you notice the article said they could put it outside the building. So they're going to have it on sidewalks, right, where you're moving through society, minding your own business, breaking no laws, but they're going to be watching everything you do, know when you carry a gun, and you're going to be a target because, number one, you don't have the real ID because you refuse to be marked by the government. You refuse to accept social credits, and you refuse to obey them on their carry stuff. This is the danger of our government.
Well, it seems to me also that this technology is not limited to government entities. They never said anywhere that it would be, or nor should it be. But again, look at the people right now that we have that are so vehemently against our rights to carry firearms. Mm-hmm. Let's say they decide to get this and identify us. We've seen reporters, I remember one in Redwood City, California, who decided to publish the names and address of the few people in her area that were concealed carry holders that had permits. This is one of the reasons why I will absolutely positively never ever get a concealed carry permit. But here she was in a very hostile community towards gun rights, publishing the names of the gun owners. There's nothing stopping anybody that is of that mindset to identify gun owners. Are they going to harass them on the streets? Will this be the new red MAGA hat where they can go out and harass people now with a firearm, possibly trigger a shooting if somebody shoots in self-defense? Yes, I'm going down the road of hypotheticals, but this is not beyond the realm of reality.
I think, yeah, well, absolutely. Because that's where I was going with this. Because listen, they're going to have the ID. They're going to be able to track everything you do, which they're already doing now because we give them all the power to do so through Facebook or LifeLog or whatever it used to be, as Greg has informed us. So we've given them all the information. They can track us. We've put GPS in our vehicles so they can follow where we go. They track our credit cards. They know everything we do. And now they're going to be able to scan you everywhere you go to know if you're even obeying your law to carry.
And the thing is, these tech giants are
84. Big Brother's watching.
The tech giants are no friend to freedom and liberty. There's a company called Textualizer in California, and they proudly, with the whole blessing of the media in this piece they had, this device will hook up to your cell phone. So if you're pulled over, a law enforcement officer can hook this up and see what you've been doing and determine whether or not you have been unlawfully using your cell phone device while traveling. So they did a demonstration, and as the reporter drove in the parking lot, they scrolled on Facebook, they sent a text, they answered a call. Now, mind you, they say, we never look at the content. We're just watching swipes and determining what you've done. And everybody's cheering this on. Wait and see what's going to happen next. If this passes through, there's going to be legislation that requires you, in the absence of any suspicion of wrongdoing, if you were pulled over and they think that you've been driving distracted. Now, think about this. All these distracted driving laws are coming now to effect. So, well, because of the distracted driving laws, you swerved in your lane a little bit. We pulled you over. If you do not submit to this invasion, this intrusion, handing over your phone to a police officer, Lord knows what they can take off of there, you can get an automatic fine, possibly a suspension, just like if you refuse to submit to an alcohol test. Well, it's to keep everybody safe. Once again, if you refuse to do one of those roadside breath analysis tests, instant loss of your license for a certain amount of time. I see this coming down the road with the phones. Mark my words. Something else that I notice as we're going into this technology, and we will go back to the AI with the firearms, but this is something I've been meaning to bring up to you guys. State Farm, I think it is insurance now. Have you been seeing these television ads all over the place? Don't mess with my discount. It tracks your speed, your braking, lane turns, everything. And if you do everything properly, you get a discount. Don't you see this being used for something else? Right now, it's being used to make you feel good and to save money. But this technology down the road is going to be issued to, again, we have social credits, driving credits. We rented a car when we were in New York. It was some little electronic piece of crap. You had to floor this thing to make it up the hills, going to, say, like Fort Ticonderoga. That takes you into a red zone, which is considered aggressive driving. Put all these pieces together, and you're going to have a profile. It's going to make your insurance more expensive. Maybe they can just send you a traffic violation in the mail. They don't even have to pull you over now. Anyway, Junk Bond, why don't you elaborate? How does AI work to determine whether or not you have a firearm?
Well, let's talk about the technology itself first, of being able to detect through stuff. Now, I've been using this technology for years. I got my first pair of X-ray glasses out of my Cracker Jack box and have never put them down. I think they're fabulous. Um, and I think you're going to see this technology everywhere, including gun ranges and just down Main Street. And it works, and it also will work in conjunction in a 5G micromillimeter wavelength, which is very troubling and very frightening. So, what does it do? It looks past the superficial, non-dense, and finds dense objects, is all it does. It's similar in statute to an X-ray machine. You go get the X-ray done. You know how the X-ray will just show that you have a broken bone. It can see your bones. It can't see the soft tissue. Well, it's the same concept here. It's no difference whatsoever. Um, but the AI, how that's going to work, it will catalog the shape of the dense items. So if parts of a dense item are visible to the technology, then it's going to be easier for it to identify it as a handgun or as a pistol. And I think it's interesting that you get this type of announcement now that something like this is coming out when we've supposedly been doing this for years at the airports, right? Hasn't the TSA spent billions of dollars putting in these systems? And now we're getting something along the lines like this that is just AI enhanced scanning. That's all it is. And this works and all that other stuff didn't work. That's the message I get out of this, is those scanners you walk through um, don't really work well. And they come up with a lot of false positives. Uh, but again, I don't know why, we haven't. Mm, I don't know why we haven't hooked up stuff with AI in a good way. We're always using it to limit and restrict people. Here, the AI is going to it's in conjunction with identifying the pistol or the handgun. It's going to catalog you, your walk, your gait, everything about you, type of shoes you wear. It can pick up all that information too, just by tuning it. And then it doesn't even need to identify if you have a pistol or not. It'll identify you as the threat. You see, there'll be a transition period where they'll move away from the gun and they'll just key in on the person, which is a lot easier for the technology to do too. So that's my 2 cents on how this is going to come about and what it's all about. I don't like, again, I don't like it's not just AI, it's machine learning and AI together, which is kind of very powerful. Uh, but again, I've always seen it used to limit people's liberty, limit their experience, limit their happiness, and I've never seen it used to enhance anyone's life in any way.
They say they're not using facial recognition software, but how do they, I mean, is this just something temporary as people, are we supposed to believe that this is temporary and fleeting and this information is not cataloged or categorized? That goes against the inherent principles of artificial intelligence. I mean, it has
So
to categorize and catalog these people to learn, correct?
sure, that's correct. That's correct. But you can have it put in so certain information will fall out over time. But what the machine has learned from that information, from that data set, will not be forgotten. Number one. Number two, facial recognition. There's a very specific legal definition of facial recognition, which is why they can say they don't use facial recognition. So, um, are they using facial recognition technology, style? Yes. They're using whole body recognition. They're using, a combination of technologies together that will pretty much map out and do a 3D cut of your body. And it can tell you size, composition, all that information. The same thing, that happens when you're standing in front of your Xbox and you turn on the games and you interact with the games. Those bars are on all the time too, and they're tracking you, looking for you, your person, because they've characterized your whole body, and they know which person walks up to play the game
Interesting.
because
I'm
of your
sorry.
composition. Yeah, go ahead.
Interestingly, they say this is to keep us safe, but it defeats the entire intent and purpose of why people conceal carry. It
That's
is
right.
to not be the first target if somebody of ill intentions comes into an area. Now, there's no stopping, I think, anybody of getting hold of this eventually and determining ahead of time who may or may not be carrying. So this could again say, okay, who are the threats to us and our ill will? We're seeing these these shootings that they are pretending to want to protect, but what's to stop somebody intent on a mass shooting from identifying those that are carrying? And unfortunately, fewer and fewer people are carrying or are likely to do something about it. So I think ultimately, once again, this is an attempt to identify those that are able to protect themselves, to sort us out, and ultimately go after those of us that are able to do so. And again, if a private business wants to have people out of their establishments who are carrying a firearm, tell us. But the problem is a lot of people say, well, I'm concealing, I'm going to do it anyway. So this is kind of also fallout from those that seek to just do so clandestinely, that just don't want to be noticed. So anyway, I think this is very troublesome. I'm very disappointed in our attorney general, but again, you don't get to be a top enforcement officer because you give a rat's fuzzy behind about liberty. So that's my take on that one.
Yeah, you ask J. Edgar Hoover about that.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about something else that I came across, and this is something that I remember having to go through when I was in high school. And this is about a case, and I saw this on a friend's news feed. And sadly, her commentary was, well, let's see what the Supreme Court has to say about this one.
Ugh.
I know. But this was a Christian student was forced to write in an Islamic conversion creed, and they're appealing their case to the Supreme Court. And the Christian teenage girl was forced to recite the Islamic conversion creed in writing her 11th grade class. She was also taught that most Muslim faith is stronger than the average Christian. Thomas More Law Center sued the school responsible, and the Fourth Circuit ruled with the school. The school then appealed to the Supreme Court. And they filed a writ for a review on Monday under the guise of teaching history or social studies. Public schools across America are promoting the religion of Islam in ways that would never be tolerated for Christianity or any other religion. I wholeheartedly concur with this. They continue by saying, I'm not aware of any school which has forced a Muslim student to write the Lord's Prayer or John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whomever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Many public schools have become a hotbed of Islamic propaganda, also true. Teaching Islam in schools has gone far beyond basic history lesson prompted by zealot Islamic activism and emboldened by confusing court decisions. Schools are now bending over backwards to promote Islam while at the same time to denigate Christianity. So let me share one of my personal experiences, and I've talked about this before. When I was in high school, I had a world history class, and a segment of that, it was actually a year-long class, was devoted to discussing and studying the various world religions. We studied Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, no Jesus. Christianity was off the list. It was never even mentioned. And written up on the board was, there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is our prophet. I experienced the exact same situation that this did, and this was back in the 1980s. So this is nothing new. I do not think running to the Supreme Court again is the appropriate remedy. This stuff needs to be handled at the beginning, or, parents should just be advocates and say, hey, if you're going to cover this, let's talk about Christianity as well. But again, running to the Supreme Court is something that I never ever support. This is the incorporation doctrine at its finest. You roll the dice and take the risk that the Supreme Court is going to say, you know what, we disagree. And no, you can't talk about Christianity in schools. They're talking about this in a secular perspective, and this is about culture, not religion. You roll the dice and run a very substantial risk that this could go against you. And now you have 5 out of over 320 million people setting policy for the entire continental landmass. That is not Republican form of government. And those that think, well, we've got some Supreme Court justices now that are conservative, so this is the time to do it. No. That is inconsistent, and you're the same ones that were screaming about liberal courts doing exactly what you want a conservative, or hopefully a conservative court, doing now. You gentlemen have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's never the right time to do the wrong thing. I think that is one
Amen.
of the key takeaways from this is you don't run back to the same people who shouldn't be involved in the first place and beg for them to help you. You go to the right people. I agree with you. The Supreme Court's definitely not the place for this. It should
Yeah,
never be there.
this is parental involvement. Parents
Yeah,
need to get involved. And you
it's
know what?
community. Yeah,
If you can't fix this, get the heck out of the public schools. I found the same thing going on in the private schools. Hey, here's an idea. Homeschool, unschool, spend time with your kids. Oh, I can't afford it. We both have to work. No, you don't. Downsize, simplify your life. There's a way to get around these untenable situations, but people don't want to pull their kids out of the state-sponsored babysitting service that the school system has become.
that yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's no secret that my wife is a school nurse, and she sees this all the time. All the time. Your child is sick. Okay, make the phone call. Hi, mom, dad, your child is sick. Okay, well, I can't get there for 2.5 hours.
Mhm.
Really?
I have a meeting.
Or yeah, I have a meeting I have to go. Really? Who needs to reorder their priorities? It's mom and dad living in the community, the same ones that are complaining about Islam being taught as the de facto religion of the state, uh, that are not doing anything about it. It's the same ones that won't come and pick up their kid when their kid's sick. They'll make an excuse on why they can't get there. Like you said, I've got a meeting. I can't. My drive is too far. She had one little boy last week who fell and broke his arm. Terrible. She called mom and said, Mom, arm is probably broken. Just letting you know. Okay. She has no driver's license and she had no money for the bus. My wife works in a section where very, very poor individuals are. So, but this lady got up, stopped whatever it was she was doing, and walked to school. That's parental involvement right there. That's someone who's not going to wait. She got to the school. She knew she had to go to the doctor. She didn't have any money to get to the doctor. So what does she do? She asked them at the school, can I borrow a couple of dollars to get a cab or something like that? So one of the people in the office just put her in the car and drove them over there to the emergency room so they can get the x-ray done. And they had to reset the arm and everything. It was a good thing he went because he had to go into surgery too because one of the blood vessels was nicked. So, but again, this is parental involvement 101. This is being there for your kid, giving them everything you have, knowing what's happening with their education, with their private life. Okay, this family, in no way could these people afford to homeschool their kid. They couldn't afford, to get the materials and meet all the state requirements to call themselves a Virginia homeschool. They couldn't do that. They had at the house. They had a cell phone. It was just one cell phone, and two adults and three older siblings all used the same cell phone. And the three older kids, all of them worked. It's
You know, you
it's
bring
not
up
hard.
requirements of homeschooling. When I was in California to homeschool, we had to file an R4 affidavit. That's what it was at the time. And the requirements were absolutely insane. You had to have a separate phone line with an answering machine. You had to have an outside record keeper and just all these requirements. And I just ignored it. I never filed. I never reported to my district. And I just did the whole thing under the radar. And I did that with my kids here. In fact, when I pulled out of the state, it was a home-based charter school through the state. And we decided to leave that because, again, the curriculum was something my children did not find interesting or inspiring.
Mhm.
Teacher that was assigned to work with us. Okay, I gave your no problem. I submitted your names to the local district. So you little Nazi brown shirt. She just turned us in. That I never did hear from them. And even when I moved here to Utah, my boys were 12 and 14, and people from that worked in the school one was a teacher in my Bible study, and said, "When are you going to put those boys in school?" And, no, and fortunately, nobody ever contacted me. But at this day and age, I am so glad that my boys now, my youngest one's 18, because I fully would expect CPS, especially in some of these, nanny states, to come
Mhm.
knocking on your door. I feel like I got it done and I slipped in under the radar. Connor Boyack, by the way, who has a fantastic book, Passion Driven Education, just came out with another one that's going to be released soon called Skip College. And I wholeheartedly endorse his endeavors. I have some differences of opinion when it comes to Prop 2, but I think ultimately this guy has a lot of really good stuff to say. So I'm going to see if we can get him on the air and talk about that book when it comes out. Something else that I came across, Gun Owners of California joins first major Second Amendment SCOTUS case in 10 years.
Let me just add one more thing to the education before we go.
Sure.
And then we can get to this because this sounds very interesting. Um, people just understand you're going to school to be indoctrinated. That's why it's run by the government. They're going to tell you what they want to tell you. No government is going to give you the information you need to overthrow it. It's going to give you just enough information to keep you thinking about things at a very low level. The rest of it is just basic mind wash, mind numb information that is going to be useless to you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And hold on, I got to go to our chat because we always tell them we will.
Okay.
Our friend Justin, Suzanne, highly recommends Carrie McDonald's Unschooled as well. And I just want to add on my note that everyone always asks us, what's the solution? Well, we always talk about separation, secession, and we always call homeschooling a level of personal secession. If you're not going to, right now we can't force our state to leave the union, but we can personally secede from the indoctrination of our children. And that is your responsibility as the adult in the house.
Absolutely. And when I first moved to Utah as well, I did check the laws, and Governor Herbert did scale back. There was a law that said, look, you don't have to school the same number of hours because you don't need to in a home setting, but you do need to cover these same topics. Well, that defeats the entire purpose of homeschooling or unschooling. And I highly advise anybody that is considering unschooling, read the book, again, Passion Driven Education, Dumbing Us Down, John Holt, Learning All the Time. These books will let you know that you can trust your children, and they will learn far more than they will if you limit them to what's being spoon-fed them in the indoctrination camps. When I was in California,
Let me just add one other thing. People today think that you have to have government to teach our children. Look at our founding generation. Most of them could read Latin. A lot of them could read Greek. A lot of them were
Common people
far better than any of us. And where did they go to school? Their home. You can learn at home.
It was the norm up until the mid 1800s, when the concept of the little red schoolhouse was brought over from Germany, the German education system at the time. And that's where the migration happened. That's where the transition to the public schools happened. And that's why you're at where you're at now.
and that
Perfect place. Look at Francis Bellamy, right? It's a perfect place to indoctrinate people.
Yep.
Teach them something that's not true, that's not right. And 100 years later, now if you don't say the pledge, people scrutinize you.
Well, the public school system that you said, came from Prussia, which was originally intended to create good little factory workers. Look at those behind the architects of Common Core. They are just out there to create good little, cubicle fillers. Right. So when I was in California, a lady was talking about getting her child to work at, I think it was Chili's. And they said, yeah, just get a note from the school, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what if your kid's homeschooled? And the woman said, no, we don't accept that. And the other lady, having a conversation with the restaurant employee, said, how do you know your children are staying with state standards if you homeschool? And I said, why would I want to lower my standards for those of the state?
Bingo.
So yeah, exactly. But I want to cover this real quick. And this was from California Globe. And what they say here, and as if this is good news, a Supreme Court decision could turn California into a shall issue state. Well, some people who don't look at the big picture are going to say, yes, that's fantastic. We're going to have DC decide to regulate California's firearms. So this is a problem with running to the federal judiciary. The general government was prohibited from regulating them at all. This is a 10th Amendment issue. This is completely within the purview of the states. So, as several new gun control bills out of the California State Senate Appropriations Committee, they spoke with Sam Paredes, executive director of Gun Owners of America, and he says, let's see here. So several new bills came out of California Senate Appropriations Committees, and Gun Owners of America may be looking at good news on the horizon since the Supreme Court's Second Amendment decisions again, these are hailed as victories for gun rights. They were disasters. I refer you to my article, How Heller Botched the Second Amendment and McDonald Was an Originalism Failure. Go to SuzanneCSherman.com. Go to Suzanne's articles. You will find them there. We've done shows about them. Here they cite the Supreme Court's Second Amendment decisions in Heller versus DC and McDonald versus Chicago. Questions continually arise concerning the scope of the power of the government's power to infringe and even restrict the possession and use of all firearms through regulations that impose harsh conditions and requirement on gun owners. Note they say here the governments. The governments, as if they're implying there is only one. And it's a tiered government, meaning top down. So the states' governments are not a parallel system, but they are subservient to. This is not the form of government that was proposed and consented to by the states. Let me continue with the article. In January, the U.S. Supreme Court announced its decision to hear a case that challenges New York City's near prohibition on owning or transporting handguns. It's significant for California, as that state also has restrictive gun laws. So in California, they joined this suit, and they're going to, in New York, it says that they have a ban on transporting a licensed, locked, unloaded handgun. You can only take it to a shooting range. They're saying that this is inconsistent with the Second Amendment, the Commerce Clause, and the constitutional right to travel. They have a joint brief that's supporting the parties challenging New York City's restrictive handgun licensing prohibition scheme as a violation of the Second Amendment and other constitutional rights. Again, the Second Amendment does not grant any rights. It's a restriction against the general government from regulating firearms at all. GOA explains that New York City allows its citizen to own a gun and keep it at the home, but they can only transport their gun from a city-sponsored gun range, of which there are only 3. New York City gun owners are not allowed to travel with their guns to competitions, even within the states, to a second home within the state, out of state, or anywhere other than state-sanctioned gun ranges. These laws absolutely stink. But the relevant threshold inquiry has to be, do they conform with the Constitution of the state of New York? President of GOA said that this case, the first case, was accepted by the High Court since Heller versus DC and McDonald clearly states that the right to keep and bear arms is an individual as opposed to a collective right. Further, this individual right was deemed so important to ordered liberty that the court ruled that neither state nor local governments could infringe upon this. Let's pick this apart. This is wrong in so many ways. It's not an individual right. It's a restriction on the general government. When we're talking about the Second Amendment, we do not call it a right. When you do, you allow the government the always winning proposition. They can take the position that rights are subject to regulation. They love when we call these constitutional or Second Amendment rights. Well, rights are subject to reasonable regulation. It's a restriction. If you say this is an ironclad prohibition against you from regulating in this area at all, then they've got nothing. But we give them that. We celebrate that. As far as this concept that says part of our ordered liberty, that is from Antonin Scalia, where he said in McDonald, this was again applying the Second Amendment to a state. I have misgivings of substantive due process, but I will acquiesce. Meaning I'm going to throw the Constitution out the window because I can. I'm going to expand government authority over the states in contravention to our founding principles because I can. Now, that was in a concurring opinion. Justice Alito gave the majority opinion, or gave the official opinion for the Supreme Court, but this was a concurring opinion. So I focused on Scalia because I call him out as a constitutionalist fraud in these two cases and explain it. So again, here we have people cheering on greater restrictions against the states. We're going to end up, and I explained this with in my article, National Reciprocity is a Trojan Horse. We're going to end up with a top-down regulation for firearms that is going to give gun owners nowhere to go. We're going to end up ultimately with laws. Again, you're rolling the dice. Ultimately, you're going to get, when you hand DC this authority, we have Kamala Harris. I am going to use executive action to ban the importation of AR-15s. Why are they saying they can do that? Because Antonin Scalia said that the Second Amendment really only applied to handguns. It's an individual right unconnected with service in the militia, but he focused on handguns. He left the door open for these further bans. Once again, this illustrates perfectly the short-sightedness, the ignorance of those who are supposed to be fighting for our gun rights. They are the biggest danger to our gun rights because they take it to a national, pardon my French, level. Very, very bad policy. Gentlemen?
Well, we've discussed this so many times, and the problem is people still just don't get it. And I said this to you when we talked about it yesterday or last night. So you have GOA, Gun Owners of America. You have the NRA, who are pushing to go to the Supreme Court to rule on something that was never delegated to the federal government. They were never given the authority in Article 1, Section 8 to regulate firearms. And when you apply the preamble to the Bill of Rights, they were further declaratory and restrictive clauses on the federal government only. So that means the Second Amendment means the federal government has zero authority over firearms. None. So you have the NRA and GOA that are fighting to take this to SCOTUS to make an unconstitutional ruling that's going to limit your rights, or you can go by the intended reason for the Bill of Rights that the framers of the Constitution gave us in the preamble to the Bill of Rights. And it means every federal firearms law is unconstitutional. So which one is better for your liberty? One that completely denies the federal government any involvement whatsoever, or the one that the NRA and GOA are pushing, the one that limits your rights by giving them authority over something that they were denied from the very beginning?
Exactly. And the president of GOA Paredes said that part of his quote, this could turn California into a shall issue state. That is within the purview of the California legislature, duly elected representatives of the people of California, who like, apparently, their gun laws because they keep electing these people into office. Somebody said recently that voting does not work. Voting absolutely works. That is why you have these draconian laws in California. That's what the people want. And then what we're saying is we are going to, via a rogue federal judiciary, circumvent our desires upon the people of the sovereign state of California. And all the while, they cite the Constitution as their authority. The problem is so many people are hoisting the constitutional flag and they have no freaking idea what it means. This is why we're in the jam we're in. I want to switch over to an article that I just had published by the 10th Amendment Center. Let me see if I can find this on here, because I saw Senator Mike Lee. Again, when we talk about the Constitution, they either don't understand it or they pick and choose when to apply it. And this article came out just the other day, May 21st, at the 10th Amendment Center. If you can't find it there, I just put it up on SuzanneCSherman.com. It's called Republican Constitutionalists Ignore the Constitution on Family Leave. And I had noticed that on May 2nd of 2019, Mike Lee, our senator out here in Utah, posted the following on his Facebook page. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution unequivocally states that Congress shall have the power to declare war. Congress, not the president, not the Pentagon, not someone else within the executive branch, but Congress. And he's absolutely correct in this assertion, but he has this emphatic application of the Constitution that's inconsistent, because less than 2 weeks later, he expressed his support for the unconstitutional Cradle Act, federally mandated paid maternity leave. There was an article in the Boston Globe he cited and saying he approved, and there's a quote: "Women of all shapes and women of all political stripes view paid maternity leave as an important issue." The article also asserts that in the United States, we are the only industrialized country not providing cash benefits to women during maternity leave, and cites data from the unconstitutional Bureau of Labor Statistics indicating only 13% of private industry employees enjoy formal paid maternity leave. The also unconstitutional 1993 Family and Medical Leave Act does guarantee 12 weeks, of time off to care for a new child. That time, however, is unpaid. So all of this is true, but the inquiry, the first one we should have, particularly from a United States senator, should be: is paid maternity leave a proper issue for Congress to address from a constitutional perspective? After all, Senator Lee was certainly upset when it appeared the executive branch was encroaching upon a power delegated to Congress. But what happens to this concern when the Constitution apparently, this concern vanishes when it requires Congress to restrain itself? They cite a survey by Hearts and Mind on the issue of paid maternity leave revealed respondents were cautious about expanding the scope of government, justifiably so, and that nearly 2/3 felt that any federal leave plan should be fiscally responsible and not increase the total amount of money the government spends or increase the taxpayer burden. The author of the article cited in the Globe is Jennifer Braceras, and she laments that the Family Act sponsored by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York would not meet this criteria. She does, however, praise a bill sponsored by Senator Marco Rubio from Florida and another introduced by Senators Joni Ernst out of Iowa and Mike Lee. These proposals give paid leave without increasing the taxes on workers or burdening businesses. How would they do that? Let me tell you. Funds for paid leave during parental time off would be taken from the also constitutional Social Security benefits at the time of requirement. However, everyone knows that Social Security is destined to run out of funds, so there's no way that this plan can be made in economic good faith. So we see journalists advocating for these policies they prefer, and that's fine. However, senators are encumbered by the constraints of the Constitution, or at least they're supposed to be. We can cite Madison Federalist 439, that the Constitution created a federalist, not a national system, and also the clearly delineated limits on federal power, that there were very few that went to the general government. The few and defined, those which remained with the states, were numerous and indefinite. The 10th Amendment reaffirms this principle, and when ratifying the Constitution, the states delegated the powers to Congress in Article 1, Section 8. So clearly, There is no constitutional authority for any type of Family Leave Act. And before you yell general welfare, there's a link in my article you can read. And you have to wonder why a conservative, I have in quotes in my article, Senator Mike Lee would be in support of it. Fantastic book on the topic, Nullification, Reclaiming Consent of the Governed. In this book, brilliant historian Clyde Wilson explains that the founding fathers did not anticipate the ravages of the two-party system and its abilities to foist cunning mediocrities on the public. He further explains that representatives today are creatures of the political parties and are more adept at winning offices than at filling them, at conniving and self-promotion than at statesmanship. Mike Lee, I mean you. The fact that family leave benefits are provided by every other industrial nation, that's no concern of ours. Unless we have an Article 5 amendment to the Constitution, it is not any of their business. And I'm trying to warn people that this plan, like minimum wage regulations, is rife with the possibility of unintended consequences. Recall Milton Friedman's admonition about judging policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. As for the Democrat plan, Benjamin Franklin comes to mind. He warned us, when the people find they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic. Again, this is a matter never delegated to the government. States have the exclusive authority to regulate this. My first choice would be this is a free market issue and only a free market issue, but I don't see the government at any level butting out. Ms. Braceras concludes her article and she says, this spring, let's make good on our Mother's Day tributes by giving mothers what they really want, paid time off with a new child. As for me, I prefer to leave these children with a legacy of limited government, respective of its proper role in constitutional restraints. Gentlemen?
You keep using that word constitutional. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Constipational?
Yeah, this is ridiculous. This is completely overstepping. And it should be completely obvious to anyone who's engaged in this conversation. There's no way that you can make the connection between paid family leave and a government responsibility to pay it whatsoever. It's a private business concept. If a business wants to offer those types of benefits, they should be allowed to offer those kind of benefits. The government shouldn't have anything to say about it, shouldn't have any restrictions about it. But here, because the government is so deeply involved in labor and in the workforce and business activities, there's more and more regulations coming out all the time, every day. I can't even imagine how many OSHA regulations are in place and how many new ones are going to be pushed through in the next 4 or 5 years alone. Everything that we do is regulated in one way or another. I kind of missed out on the land of the free thing. And I think it's kind of the land of the regulated now.
Oh, absolutely. And, just like with minimum wage, we see that those that are harmed are the ones that it was intended to help in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's say somebody wants to work and sell their services for $8 an hour. Now they're precluded from doing so because somebody is going to hire an individual with more skills, more education for that job. Maybe somebody's going to be less inclined to hire women of childbearing age, whether or not they intend to have children or whether or not they would even want to take paid family leave. This is going to, again, have unintended consequences. It's none of their business. And again, this is only going to hurt the people it is intended to help, but it is something that they can virtue signal and say that we have done for women and for families, when again, what they really need to do is butt out. And we are out of time. I don't think we have a live show tomorrow. I will be on Loving Liberty with my friend Brian Hyde, so you can find us over there. And we'll be back next week. On behalf of Greg Carpenter, Jeff Johnson, and the rest of us at Cerberus Radio Network, I want to thank you for listening. God bless you. Have a great weekend.
I'll be out on paid maternity leave.